These are my dreaded tiled front steps, and this project has been plaguing me since before I even bought this house. And let me show you why. Stairs should not do that, in my opinion. It even got so bad that this riser piece started to fall out every time someone would step on this middle step. So my biggest issue with tiled steps is that stairs need to be able to flex under weight, under live loads, and tiles cannot flex the way that you need them to be on stairs. I've been putting off this project for quite a while because I really didn't know how to handle something more structural like stairs, but it is well past time to get these tiles out and finally start to tackle this project. Let's rock and roll.
Before we rip this out, let's walk through some stair terminology in case you're not familiar. The part that you actually step on is called the tread, and the front edge of each tread is the nosing. The vertical piece coming up from the tread is a riser, and finally, the support structures on either side are called stringers. Now that you know the terms, let's start making a mess. The fact that these tiles were hardly even attached to the construction stairs underneath did make removing them super easy for the most part. As you can see, the tread tiles came right off without even breaking a sweat, and the risers weren't much different. One of the things I noticed once I got these off was just how little thinset was used. Plus, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't see obvious trowel marks left behind like this either. I don't know a ton about tiling, but I do know you need proper coverage to get them to hold up well. So while I don't think tiles are a good option in a situation like this, I do wonder if they may have stood up better had they been installed differently. For the most part, removing these was really easy, but there were a few spots where the tiles actually were stuck on pretty well, and that seemed to be in areas where some kind of adhesive was used, because I kept finding these little yellow globs of old adhesive on the backs of tiles that gave me the most trouble. Speaking of trouble, these bottom risers were by far the most difficult, because not only did they also get applied with that adhesive, the entire riser they were attached to kept bouncing back against the impact of the hammer. So those ones did end up making me break a sweat, and I think I spent as long removing those 3 tiles as I did on the rest of the stairs entirely.
Finally! So I'm sitting here trying to figure out how these darn stairs are put together and what my options are. I can't just lift the treads right up because they're actually inset into the side stringer pieces, so I can't just get a crowbar in there and lift them up. That would just be too easy. So, I'm a little bit lost. I think I'm gonna have to think about this for a bit.
One eternity later.
Anyway, I'll just keep thinking on it and let you know what I come up with. So it's a few days later. I've slept on what to do around these stairs for a few nights. And I think what makes the most sense in terms of time and in terms of ease to get it done and everything, as well as just keeping in mind the fact that I'm a beginner and I haven't done this before, I'm gonna buy some stair tread caps that just slide on top of the existing construction tread that's here. So that's gonna make it so I don't have to pull apart the stringers on either side and try and figure out how everything was put together and then get it put back together and clean up the drywall that I'll probably make a mess of and all of those things. So the construction stairs that are here right now are really solid. They're actually a lot more solid than the tile ever was. So I don't want to risk messing up. Sorry, my cat wants me to open the door for him. Where was I? So I'm gonna hit my local stores, see what they have in stock. But I know for sure that I'm gonna need to cut off the existing bullnose that's on these construction treads right now, because the caps that I buy are gonna come with their own bullnose. So I'm gonna clean the mortar off of these and then go ahead and cut the existing bullnose and see where we're at after that.
What started innocently enough as just cutting off the nosing quickly devolved into a game of how much could I cut before my 2 amp hour batteries died.
Okay, battery died. Battery died again!
And the answer was half of 1 step. And after a stupid amount of effort between a dull handsaw and my multi-tool, I managed to pull the first bit of nosing off.
Ah, success!
I left the next 2 treads for the next day after I got my batteries charged up again, and luckily I had enough juice to cut through them both.
I just finished getting the bulk of the bull noses off the last of the stairs, and they're looking good. They definitely need some cleanup because I was really nervous about cutting too far in and actually cutting through the existing riser structure. So what I did is I erred on the side of caution and cut wider than I thought I really needed to, just because I'm kind of cutting blind. But let me just show you what we're working with here. We've got a fair bit of chunk to take care of. For the most part, this is pretty close to flush, so I'll probably come in with a sander for these bits. Down here, looks a bit of a mess, probably because it is, but there's a nail right here. So I'm just gonna have to be careful there. And then similarly, on the bottom here, just some excess. I started to cut in too deep right here. So that's just an example of how you're cutting blind. So I'll come in and fix it all up, and then we'll move on to next step.
This little multi-tool I'm using here to clean everything up has a special place in my heart. It was actually the first tool I ever bought back when I lived in an apartment and was trying to do woodworking on my balcony during the summer months. I've come a very long way since then with Grandpa's tools, but this little one is a tried and true staple in my toolbox.
So I picked up 3 of these simple steps, from Alexandria. So these are from Home Depot. They come with the tread on top, the tread cap, as well as a matching riser. I also realized that I only bought 3 because I have 3 treads, but I have 4 risers. So I think I'm gonna have to go buy another pack, which really sucks because they're $60 and I don't need an extra tread. But unfortunately they don't sell the risers on their own, and I do want the risers to match. So I guess we're spending $60 on a piece of MDF with a little veneer on it, but c'est la vie.
I grabbed my measurements and took my first riser out to the garage to get it cut to size. As you can see, Grandpa's old miter saw isn't quite capable of cutting the entire depth of these risers, so I turned to my circular saw to shave off the rest, albeit not very cleanly. But then I realized if I ripped my risers to their final height first, I would just be able to cut them to width with my miter saw.
Yes, looks great.
While this method was going to work just fine for these risers, in the back of my mind I knew it wasn't going to be an option for the stair treads. Getting annoyed with the limitations in my shop, I decided to do something about it.
So I caved and I bought a new miter saw because I've wanted one for a while and this is a good project to test it out on. So why don't we do that? We got the blade on, but it's super late, so we're not gonna do any actual stair cutting, but we are gonna have a little fun and just cut some scrap just to see what it's like. So, engage the laser. Ooh, there's a laser. And then let's get something to cut. Oh, I didn't quite cut all the way through the back, but whoops. Well, my current saw couldn't do that, but I guess this is my current saw now. I can't say that anymore. My current saw can do whatever I want. Very cool.
After grabbing the remainder of the measurements, I was able to crush out the other risers, and this new saw was truly a dream to work with. To prevent veneer tear out on these, I ran a strip of masking tape along the edge I was cutting, and it gave a nice clean finish. As for the case of the missing riser, I ended up just giving in and buying another tread and riser pack. I tried to create my own with some scrap MDF and a sheet of veneer, but unfortunately they just didn't quite match up well enough to use. So you win this time, Home Depot. But after all of the risers had been cut to size and polished off, they were looking great.
Now that we have the risers all figured out and it's time to move on to measuring the stair treads, it's time to also pull out the stair tread measuring tool that I made. I'll have a separate video on how I put it together, but it's just made out of some scrap plywood. It took half an hour or so to put together, and it's going to come in super handy for this project. So all you do is set it down on the spot you want to measure, and you adjust these angle pieces on either end to line up to where your stringers sit on the side. Tighten this down. Normally you would use a wing nut on these, but I didn't have any handy in the garage when I made mine, so I just put some regular nuts on it and use a socket to get them nice and tight. And there you have it. There is my template for the size of this middle stair, and I can just transfer that onto the tread itself and know that I have a good and reliable template to cut from.
Even with nice new tools and specialty jigs, I often get very nervous before making important cuts like this, because I know that one mismarked measurement or misaligned blade can mean wasted material and another trip to the hardware store. But I set everything up the best I could, and then I just went for it. And what do you know? It worked.
Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous. Woohoo! Let's move her inside and see how she fits. And here it is, sitting in place. Minor gapping down the sides, but to be expected. Also, these kind of bulge out, which is really frustrating, which makes it really hard to get stuff lined up. I think this looks amazing. I think it's gonna be so nice when it's all done. So I'm just gonna keep going here now, get the other two cut and in, and then as long as the dry fit looks good, we'll start finishing them.
After I had one tread under my belt, I was feeling pretty confident and got the next ones done without too much trouble. Much like my grandpa used to do, I felt more comfortable sneaking up on my measurements to make sure I didn't accidentally cut too much in one go, which was great in theory, but it meant I cut each tread probably 5 or 6 times before it finally fit.
There we go.
Good?
Yeah.
With my little dance, I tested out the level and stability of the treads. The top and middle were both solid, but the bottom one was really uneven, so it was gonna need some shimming to get it to cooperate. But that wasn't gonna stop us from admiring our hard work.
I'm sitting on my new stairs! They are not actually put together yet, but they all fit and they look really good, if I do say so myself. There are definitely some little gaps that I'm gonna have to fill, but that's inevitable. Trying to get these lined up so that they would actually fit into the space but also have as little gapping as possible was truly a challenge. But we made it. We're on the other side and I'm really happy with it. So let's pull these all out, get out to the garage, slap some finish on them, and then we'll be ready to paint up the stringers and actually use some adhesive to get these down and sticking nicely. And then it'll be time for trim, and then that'll be a wrap.
If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know I love the diamond wood finish from Varathane. This stuff is super easy to use and gives as close to a factory finish as I've seen from anything else. It also works really well on maple, which has a tendency to absorb unevenly and look quite blotchy. While I waited for that to dry, I moved inside and primed and painted the stair stringers. The great thing about doing this before the final treads go down is that you don't have to tape anything off because everything here is going to be covered up. And now for a touch of paint. That's better. Just for a sanity check, I did one last dry fit before pulling out the adhesive and getting things locked down.
What do you think?
I think that looks great.
With a successful dry fit under our belts, it was time to get these suckers stuck in place. And to do that, we used PL Premium, a polyurethane construction adhesive that's incredibly strong. So unlike the old treads, these new ones won't be going anywhere. For extra security, I shot a few pin nails into the risers as well. Keeping those nails really close to the top and bottom edge means they'll be covered up by the treads and nosing we'll put on afterwards.
Are you as ready as I am to put some treads on this damn thing? Because I'm ready.
We applied the treads using that same PL Premium adhesive, but this time skipping the pin nails. We also added some weight to the treads to help them adhere nice and evenly.
Once again, my old saxophone and this random speaker saved the day. Except that's never actually happened before, so this is the first time.
We let the first two treads set up for about 24 hours before coming back to sort out the bottom. I don't know if you remember, but it was very uneven, so we had to take some time to shim everything up before putting that new tread down. And after the obligatory dance test, and a slightly more reliable level check, she was looking good. Back in the garage, I started cutting my trim pieces to run along the top of the stringers. Nothing too fancy here, just some head scratching to get the angles looking good and a test of my new saw's depth gauge. Then it was a few coats of finish and it was back inside for the install. Unfortunately, I seem to have forgotten to hit record when I went to put those last trim pieces in, but trust me, they are there.
Okay, I want to talk through something with you guys. So I was thinking, because of the big gaps that I need to cover on the bottom, let me just show you. See where the tile was before, there's quite large gaps. So my thought was I would go over to the hardware store and I would grab some quarter round that I could use to cover them. Unfortunately, all that my local place had was quarter round that is way too small. What I'm thinking now is I'm gonna have to make my own quarter round out of what I have left of the trim. So along the edge of any of the treads here, there is some gapping. Whether my measurements weren't quite right, my angle wasn't quite right, but also this part bumps out in the middle, so it means that it's nice and tight in the middle, but on the front end and the back end, there is a gap. So what I'm thinking I can do is take my new piece of quarter round and just cover up the inside edge. How nice and finished would that look? So let's head to the garage to put these ideas into action.
First, I made my larger quarter rounds for the bottom. Now you'll have to bear with me for this really awkward clamp and route situation because this is just the best I can do with a short piece of material and no router table. I wanted to make sure these trim pieces had a nice return down on them instead of just abruptly ending, so that meant a little bit of trial and error and a lot of swapping saw angles before I got all of the pieces cut. I followed the exact same process on the smaller store-bought quarter round to create the trim that will frame out each step. Before I added the trim to all the treads, I salvaged one of the riser cutoffs to add it as the nosing just above the top step. I added some masking tape before I shot in my pin nails so that there's less cleanup to do when I fill these holes with wood filler afterwards. And with those final touches in place, it's time to look back on this transformation. And that is a wrap on the stair saga. I can't believe it's finally over. It took ages, but it was well worth it. There was a big learning curve on this project for me, as there often is, because usually I'm doing things for the very first time, and I'm bringing you guys along for the ride as it happens. So you get to learn from my mistakes, both good and bad. But one piece that I want to hone in on that I learned on this project was the value of scribing, and I really think I would have ended up with a cleaner, more polished look at the end had I taken a little time to learn about scribing and actually implement that, both for the treads but also for the trim pieces along either stringer. There's a common saying that caulking and paint makes you the carpenter you ain't, and I am living proof of that one in this project, but I am still very happy with where we ended up. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. If you have any advice or thoughts, please drop them in the comments down below. Consider giving this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribing to see more content like this. Until next time, happy building and don't be an axe hole.